Chapter 30. Laws concerning vows. Moses spoke to the heads of the tribes of the children of Israel, saying, This is the thing which Yahweh has commanded. When a man vows a vow to Yahweh, or swears an oath to bind his soul with a bond, he shall not break his word. He shall do according to all that proceeds out of his mouth. Also, when a woman vows a vow to Yahweh, and binds herself by a bond, being in her father's house, and in her youth, and her father hears her vow, and her bond with which she has bound her soul, and her father holds his peace at her, then all her vows shall stand, and every bond with which she has bound her soul shall stand. But if her father disallow her in the day that he hears, none of her vows or of her bonds with which she has bound her soul shall stand. And Yahweh will forgive her, because her father disallowed her. If she is married to a husband, while her vows are on her, or the rash utterance of her lips with which she has bound her soul, and her husband hear it, and hold his peace at her in the day that he hears it, then her vows shall stand, and her bonds with which she has bound her soul shall stand. But if her husband disallow her in the day that he hears it, then he shall make void her vow which is on her, and the rash utterance of her lips, with which she has bound her soul, and Yahweh will forgive her. But the vow of a widow, or of her who is divorced, even everything with which she has bound her soul, shall stand against her. If she vowed in her husband's house, or bound her soul by bond with an oath, and her husband heard it, and held his peace at her, and didn't disallow her, then all her vows shall stand, and every bond with which she bound her soul shall stand. But if her husband made them null and void in the day that he heard them, then whatever proceeded out of her lips concerning her vows, or concerning the bond of her soul, shall not stand. Her husband has made them void, and Yahweh will forgive her. Every vow and every binding oath to afflict the soul, her husband may establish it, or her husband may make it void. But if her husband altogether hold his peace at her from day to day, then he establishes all her vows, or all her bonds, which are on her. He has established them, because he held his peace at her in the day that he heard them. But if he shall make them null and void after that he has heard them, then he shall bear her iniquity. These are the statutes which Yahweh commanded Moses, between a man and his wife, between a father and his daughter, being in her youth in her father's house. Chapter 31. Vengeance on Midian. Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying,
Avenge the children of Israel for the Midianites. Afterward you shall be gathered to your people.
Moses spoke to the people, saying, Arm men from among you for the war, that they may go against Midian, to execute Yahweh's vengeance on Midian. Of every tribe 1,000, throughout all the tribes of Israel, you shall send to the war. So there were delivered out of the thousands of Israel 1,000 of every tribe, 12,000 armed for war. Moses sent them, 1,000 of every tribe, to the war. Them and Phinehas, the son of Eleazar the priest, to the war, with the vessels of the sanctuary, and the trumpets for the alarm in his hand. They warred against Midian, as Yahweh commanded Moses, and they killed every male. They killed the kings of Midian with the rest of their slain, Evi, and Rechem, and Zur, and Hur, and Reba, the 5 kings of Midian. Balaam also, the son of Beor, they killed with the sword. The children of Israel took captive the women of Midian, and their little ones, and all their livestock, and all their flocks, and all their goods they took for a prey. All their cities in the places in which they lived, and all their encampments, they burnt with fire. They took all the spoil, and all the prey, both of man and of animal. They brought the captives, and the prey, and the spoil, to Moses, and to Eleazar the priest, and to the congregation of the children of Israel, to the camp at the plains of Moab, which are by the Jordan at Jericho. Moses and Eleazar the priest, and all the princes of the congregation, went forth to meet them outside of the camp. Moses was angry with the officers of the army, the captains of thousands, and the captains of hundreds, who came from the service of the war. Moses said to them, "Have you saved all the women alive? Behold, these caused the children of Israel, through the counsel of Balaam, to commit trespass against Yahweh in the matter of Peor, and so the plague was among the congregation of Yahweh. Now therefore, kill every male among the little ones, and kill every woman who has known man by lying with him. But all the girls who have not known man by lying with him, keep alive for yourselves. Encamp outside of the camp 7 days. Whoever has killed any person, and whoever has touched any slain, purify yourselves on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day, you and your captives. As to every garment, and all that is made of skin, and all work of goat's hair, and all things made of wood, you shall purify yourselves." Eleazar the priest said to the men of war who went to the battle, "This is the statute of the law which Yahweh has commanded Moses. However, the gold and the silver, the brass, the iron, the tin, and the lead, everything that may withstand the fire, you shall make to go through the fire, and it shall be clean. Nevertheless, it shall be purified with the water for impurity. And all that doesn't withstand the fire, you shall make to go through the water. You shall wash your clothes on the 7th day, and you shall be clean. And afterward you shall come into the camp." Division of the spoils. Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying,
"Take the sum of the prey that was taken, both of man and of animal, you and Eleazar the priest, and the heads of the fathers' houses of the congregation, and divide the prey into 2 parts, between the men skilled in war who went out to battle, and all the congregation. Levy a tribute to Yahweh of the men of war who went out to battle, 1 soul of 500, both of the persons, and of the cattle, and of the donkeys, and of the flocks. Take it of their half, and give it to Eleazar the priest, for Yahweh's wave offering. Of the children of Israel's half, you shall take 1 drawn out of every 50, of the persons, of the cattle, of the donkeys, and of the flocks, even of all the livestock, and give them to the Levites, who perform the duty of the tabernacle of Yahweh."
Moses and Eleazar the priest did as Yahweh commanded Moses. Now the prey, over and above the booty which the men of war took, was 675,000 sheep, and 72,000 head of cattle, and 61,000 donkeys, and 32,000 persons in all, of the women who had not known man by lying with him. The half, which was the portion of those who went out to war, was in number 337,500 sheep, and Yahweh's tribute of the sheep was 675. The cattle were 36,000, of which Yahweh's tribute was 72. The donkeys were 30,500, of which Yahweh's tribute was 61. The persons were 16,000, of whom Yahweh's tribute was 32 persons. Moses gave the tribute, which was Yahweh's wave offering, to Eleazar the priest, as Yahweh commanded Moses. Of the children of Israel's half, which Moses divided off from the men who warred, now the congregation's half was 337,500 sheep, and 36,000 head of cattle, and 30,500 donkeys, and 16,000 persons. Even of the children of Israel's half, Moses took one drawn out of every 50, both of man and of animal, and gave them to the Levites, who performed the duty of the tabernacle of Yahweh, as Yahweh commanded Moses. The voluntary offering. The officers who were over the thousands of the army, the captains of thousands and the captains of hundreds, came near to Moses. And they said to Moses, "Your servants have taken the sum of the men of war who are under our command, and there lacks not one man of us. We have brought Yahweh's offering, what every man has gotten, of jewels of gold, armlets and bracelets, signet rings, earrings, and necklaces, to make atonement for our souls before Yahweh." Moses and Eleazar the priest took the gold of them, even all worked jewels, all the gold of the wave offering that they offered up to Yahweh, of the captains of thousands and of the captains of hundreds, was 16,750 shekels. For the men of war had taken booty, every man for himself. Moses and Eleazar the priest took the gold of the captains of thousands and of hundreds, and brought it into the tent of meeting, for a memorial for the children of Israel before Yahweh. Chapter 32. Reuben and Gad ask for Gilead. Now the children of Reuben and the children of Gad had a very great multitude of livestock. And when they saw the land of Jazer and the land of Gilead, that, behold, the place was a place for livestock, the children of Gad and the children of Reuben came and spoke to Moses and to Eleazar the priest, and to the princes of the congregation, saying, Adaroth, and Dibon, and Jazer, and Nimrah, and Heshbon, and Elealeh, and Sebum, and Nebo, and beyond, the land which Yahweh struck before the congregation of Israel, is a land for livestock, and your servants have livestock. They said, If we have found favor in your sight, let this land be given to your servants for a possession. Don't bring us over the Jordan. Moses reproves Reuben and Gad. Moses said to the children of Gad and to the children of Reuben, Shall your brothers go to the war, and shall you sit here? Why do you discourage the heart of the children of Israel from going over into the land which Yahweh has given them? Your fathers did so when I sent them from Kadesh Barnea to see the land. For when they went up to the valley of Eshcol and saw the land, they discouraged the heart of the children of Israel, that they should not go into the land which Yahweh had given them. Yahweh's anger was kindled in that day, and he swore, saying, Surely none of the men who came up out of Egypt, from 20 years old and upward shall see the land which I swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, because they have not wholly followed me, except Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, and Joshua, the son of Nun, because they have followed Yahweh completely. Yahweh's anger was kindled against Israel, and he made them wander back and forth in the wilderness 40 years, until all the generation who had done evil in the sight of Yahweh was consumed. Behold, you have risen up in your father's place, an increase of sinful men, to augment yet the fierce anger of Yahweh toward Israel. For if you turn away from after him, he will yet again leave them in the wilderness, and you will destroy all this people. Reuben and Gad appeased Moses. They came near to him and said, "We will build sheepfolds here for our livestock, and cities for our little ones, but we ourselves will be ready armed to go before the children of Israel, until we have brought them to their place, and our little ones shall dwell in the fortified cities, because of the inhabitants of the land. We will not return to our houses, until the children of Israel have inherited every man his inheritance. For we will not inherit with them on the other side of the Jordan and forward, because our inheritance is fallen to us on this side of the Jordan, eastward." Moses said to them, "If you will do this thing, if you will arm yourselves to go before Yahweh to the war, and every armed man of you will pass over the Jordan before Yahweh, until he has driven out his enemies from before him, and the land is subdued before Yahweh, then afterward you shall return, and be guiltless towards Yahweh, and towards Israel. And this land shall be to you for a possession before Yahweh. But if you will not do so, behold, you have sinned against Yahweh, and be sure your sin will find you out. Build cities for your little ones, and folds for your sheep, and do that which has proceeded out of your mouth." The children of Gad and the children of Reuben spoke to Moses, saying, "Your servants will do as my Lord commands. Our little ones, our wives, our flocks, and all our livestock shall be there in the cities of Gilead. But your servants will pass over, every man who is armed for war, before Yahweh to battle, as my Lord says." So Moses commanded concerning them to Eleazar the priest, and to Joshua the son of Nun, and to the heads of the fathers' houses of the tribes of the children of Israel. Moses said to them, "If the children of Gad and the children of Reuben will pass with you over the Jordan, every man who is armed to battle before Yahweh, and the land shall be subdued before you, then you shall give them the land of Gilead for a possession. But if they will not pass over with you armed, they shall have possessions among you in the land of Canaan." The children of Gad and the children of Reuben answered, saying, "As Yahweh has said to your servants, so will we do. We will pass over armed before Yahweh into the land of Canaan, and the possession of our inheritance shall remain with us beyond the Jordan." Reuben and Gad settle in Gilead. Moses gave to them, even to the children of Gad and to the children of Reuben, and to the half-tribe of Manasseh, the son of Joseph, the kingdom of Sihon, king of the Amorites, and the kingdom of Og, king of Bashan, the land, according to the cities of it, with their borders, even the cities of the surrounding land. The children of Gad built Dibon, and Ataroth, and Aroer, and Atroth-shophan, and Jazer, and Jogbehah, and Beth-nimrah, and Beth-haran, fortified cities, and folds for sheep. The children of Reuben built Heshbon, and Elealeh, and Kiriathaim, and Nebo, and Baal-meon. their names being changed, and Sibmah. And they gave other names to the cities which they built. The children of Machir, the son of Manasseh, went to Gilead, and took it, and dispossessed the Amorites who were therein. Moses gave Gilead to Machir, the son of Manasseh, and he lived therein. Jair, the son of Manasseh, went and took its towns, and called them Havoth Jair. Nobah went and took Kenath and its villages, and called it Nobah, after his own name. Chapter 33. The 42 Journeys of the Israelites. These are the journeys of the children of Israel, when they went forth out of the land of Egypt, by their armies, under the hand of Moses and Aaron. Moses wrote their goings out according to their journeys, by the commandment of Yahweh. And these are their journeys according to their goings out. They traveled from Ramesses in the 1st month, on the 15th day of the 1st month. On the next day after the Passover, the children of Israel went out with a high hand, in the sight of all the Egyptians, while the Egyptians were burying all their firstborn, whom Yahweh had struck among them. On their gods also Yahweh executed judgments. The children of Israel traveled from Ramesses and encamped in Succoth. They traveled from Succoth and encamped in Etham, which is in the edge of the wilderness. They traveled from Etham and turned back to Pihahiroth, which is before Baal-zephon, and they encamped before Migdol. They traveled from before Hieroth, and passed through the midst of the sea into the wilderness. And they went 3 days' journey in the wilderness of Etham, and encamped in Marah. They traveled from Marah, and came to Elim. And in Elim were 12 springs of water, and 70 palm trees. And they encamped there. They traveled from Elim, and encamped by the Red Sea. They traveled from the Red Sea, and encamped in the wilderness of Sin. They traveled from the wilderness of Sin, and encamped in Dophkah. They traveled from Dophkah, and encamped in Alush. They traveled from Alush, and encamped in Rephidim, where there was no water for the people to drink. They traveled from Rephidim, and encamped in the wilderness of Sinai. They traveled from the wilderness of Sinai, and encamped in Kibroth-Hattaavah. They traveled from Kibroth-Hattaavah, and encamped in Hazeroth. They traveled from Hazeroth, and encamped in Rithmah. They traveled from Rithmah, and encamped in Rimmon-Perez. They traveled from Rimmon-Perez, and encamped in Libnah. They traveled from Libnah, and encamped in Rissah. They traveled from Rissah, and encamped in Kehelatha. They traveled from Kehelatha, and encamped in Mount Shephar. They traveled from Mount Shephar, and encamped in Harada. They traveled from Harada, and encamped in Makaloth. They traveled from Makaloth, and encamped in Tahath. They traveled from Tahath, and encamped in Terah. They traveled from Terah, and encamped in Mithkah. They traveled from Mithkah, and encamped in Hashmonah. They traveled from Hashmonah, and encamped in Moseroth. They traveled from Moseroth, and encamped in Bene-Jaakan. They traveled from Bene-Jaakan, and encamped in Hor-Haggidgad. They traveled from Hor-Haggidgad, and encamped in Jotbathah. They traveled from Jotbathah, and encamped in Abrona. They traveled from Abrona, and encamped in Ezion-Geber. They traveled from Ezion-Geber, and encamped in the wilderness of Zin. The same is Kedesh. They traveled from Kedesh, and encamped in Mount Hor. in the edge of the land of Edom. Aaron the priest went up into Mount Hor at the commandment of Yahweh, and died there. In the 40th year after the children of Israel were come out of the land of Egypt, in the 5th month, on the 1st day of the month. Aaron was 123 years old when he died in Mount Hor. The Canaanite, the king of Arad, who lived in the south, in the land of Canaan, heard of the coming of the children of Israel. They traveled from Mount Hor and encamped in Zalmonah. They traveled from Zalmonah and encamped in Punan. They traveled from Punan and encamped in Oboth. They traveled from Oboth and encamped in Laiabarim, in the border of Moab. They traveled from Laim and encamped in Dibon Gad. They traveled from Dibon Gad and encamped in Almon Diblathaim. They traveled from Almon Diblathaim and encamped in the mountains of Abarim, before Nebo. They traveled from the mountains of Abarim and encamped in the plains of Moab, by the Jordan at Jericho. They encamped by the Jordan, from Beth Jeshimoth even to Ebel Shittim, in the plains of Moab. Canaanites to be destroyed. Yahweh spoke to Moses in the plains of Moab, by the Jordan at Jericho, saying,
Speak to the children of Israel, and tell them, when you pass over the Jordan into the land of Canaan, then you shall drive out all the inhabitants of the land from before you, and destroy all their figured stones, and destroy all their molten images, and demolish all their high places. And you shall take possession of the land, and dwell therein. For I have given the land to you to possess it. You shall inherit the land by lot according to your families. To the more you shall give the more inheritance, and to the fewer you shall give the less inheritance. Wherever the lot falls to any man, that shall be his. You shall inherit according to the tribes of your fathers. But if you do not drive out the inhabitants of the land from before you, then those you let remain of them will be as pricks in your eyes, and as thorns in your sides, and they will harass you in the land in which you dwell. It shall happen that as I thought to do to them, so will I do to you.